Hello everyone, this is Linkamus Prime, and I know I am very late to talk about this, but I gotta talk about it. So apparently, Michael Bay is set to come back to direct a new Transformers movie. Now, I just want to make this clear, because I want everyone to be very careful of the media they consume, because there is a lot of misinterpretation with what this actually means. The first report of this that a lot of people saw was from the Hollywood Handle, and there was a just miscommunication on their end with what they meant to kind of construe with saying that Michael Bay was coming back. There is no official confirmation that Michael Bay is in fact returning to Transformers. What is actually going on, and as far as we can at least kind of assume, just because again there's nothing official, there's nothing confirmed, is the fact that Michael Bay is currently developing a Transformers movie that he wants to direct, but he hasn't pitched it to Paramount just yet. You have to pitch the movie first, and Paramount has to approve it. And as of right now, we have to also remember that Michael Bay was fired by Paramount as director, and then they brought in Travis Knight in 2018, and then, you know, we had Bumblebee, Rise of the Beast, and then Transformers 1. So we've had 3 new directors so far. Michael Bay has not directed a single one. They allowed him to be a producer for these films, but they never allowed him to be a director. So for him to want to come back as a director is kind of just wishful thinking on his end, and we just have to keep it as, again, this is just an assumption. There's nothing confirmed, there's nothing official, so I just want to make that clear. Now, I will say, if Michael Bay were returning to direct a Transformers movie, then there's only one movie I think everyone can agree that we would like for him to direct, and that is a official sequel to The Last Knight to just end off the Bayverse. That is, in my opinion, and in a lot of other people's opinion, what is needed if he is to come back. That's kind of like the only thing that people have kind of been wanting, at least people who actually want it versus the people that don't want it, which I can see both sides. I can agree with both sides. I'm not disagreeing with anyone, but you know, if Michael Bay is to return, that should be the focus. Unfortunately, it seems to look like the movie that he wants to direct is not connected to either or, you know, part of the franchise that has already been previously established. So not his existing universe, and not the universe that has been starting to be explored within the Bumblebee and Rise of the Beast universe, or Transformers 1 or anything like that. So it's just a standalone story that he wants to develop, and in my opinion, I don't think that should be his focus. Now, just going off on a whim and saying that this is confirmed information, the thing that I can say is that if this is in fact the case, that Michael Bay does want to come back for Transformers, that he does want to direct a new movie, then I feel like there may have been some kind of tone change with Michael Bay. Because we have to remember that, you know, after, you know, 2007 and Revenge of the Fallen, because Revenge of the Fallen didn't do so well, Michael Bay didn't exactly want to return, but Paramount was like, hey, let's just do a third movie. Michael Bay was okay. They did the third movie, and then it broke $1 billion. And then Paramount was like, you know, they couldn't find a director, so they went back to Michael Bay, and they're like, we can't find a director. We need you to come back for a 4th movie. He's like, I told you guys I was done after 3, and then, you know, Paramount was just like, well, too bad, we need a 4th. So Age of Extinction comes out, and then it earns more than Dark of the Moon, and then Paramount's like, well, we need a 5th one now, and then Michael Bay's like, oh, come on. So they do a 5th one, and then finally, because we have to remember, people were starting to get a little fatigued with the franchise after Age of Extinction. So even though there were people in the seats for Age of Extinction, there was $1.2 billion made on that installment. The Last Knight only earned $600 million. And then from that point on, that's when the box office decline with the Transformers movies started to kind of happen, with Bumblebee only earning $400 million, and then Rise of the Beast also earning a little less than that, so but still within the $400 million range. And and then finally Transformers 1 with only 125 around that $1 million. So, there's been a steady decline with the box office, and that was just due to Michael Bay's kind of fatigue with, wanting to direct movies. And when you have a director that's fatigued with the franchise and he doesn't want to come back and you force him to come back, then that's just unfortunately what's going to happen. I think what's different this time is the fact that it's been almost a decade since he's been part of the franchise. It is 2025. The last time he directed a Transformers movie was 2017. So, it's been a while. And I can see, if there is some kind of change of heart on his end that, maybe he wants to come back. I feel like this is just a situation of he hasn't really been able, because from what I've heard, there hasn't been a lot of projects for him to get greenlit. So because of the lack of project that he's been able to accomplish, I mean, he's literally working on a Skibbity Toilet short film. That should tell you enough as to how deprived of directing material that he has been provided. There's really not much for him to do. So I feel like, wanting to go back to Transformers, maybe there's a little bit more of a motivation there that, maybe it's like, okay, if he has a different mindset with this, I think we should maybe let him cook. And that's just me. Again, though, if he is to return, Paramount should only let him make a final installment to his intended universe. That should be it. I do not think that he should return for other movies. He should still, of course, be an executive producer, but in terms of a directional position, I do not think that is something that should be continued down the line. I do think that he should just be allowed to direct one more movie if this is to happen. Now, moving on from that, we also heard that Josh Cooley. Now, this one seems a little bit more definitive, if this is the case, but that Josh Cooley had closed a deal with Paramount to direct a live-action installment. Now, there was a time where I was thinking to myself that if, because of how well Josh Cooley executed Transformers 1, that he should be allowed to, if they don't have a director for the G.I. Joe crossover, which they don't. We already know what happened with Stephen Caple Jr. and Lorenzo Di Bonaventura. We already know about the whole thing that happened between them, that there was a lot of conflict, and there's a lot of internal conflict that was going on during the production of that movie. So it's just like, yeah, I don't blame Stephen. And also the fact that Stephen had another movie that he was working on. So, it was just a perfect out for him to just be like, okay, so out of everything that happened, I firmly believe that they have a solid director on their hands already with Josh Cooley, who has proven that he can make a movie that may not be able to get a lot of people in seats, but the people that are in the seats are going to love it. And he did a fantastic job with Transformers 1. So I can see him doing an outstanding job with a live action entry. And that is just my personal opinion. Now, what this movie could be, I have no idea. It really, really depends. And that is going to open another question that I'm going to bring up in a bit in this video. But if I were to go on a whim of what movie I think he should direct, I do think he should direct the G.I. Joe crossover movie, because that movie is missing a director right now. The only things that we know about that movie is the writer, and this writer has worked on Kong Skull Island, Jurassic World 2015, and I think majority of the Star Wars sequel trilogy. Now, granted, he wrote the screenplays for those, but he didn't actually. I think his vision just did not get executed with those movies, so that's why they came out poorly. So I would not let his credits as part of those movies deter you from having at least a positive outlook on his capabilities for writing this movie. So I would just be careful with that, because just because he's part of those doesn't mean that that shows on his record of being a writer. So I have trust in him. I think he would do an amazing job, but that also goes, it goes to question, though, what is going on with the G.I. Joe crossover? Aside from the fact we know who the writer is, aside from the fact that Chris Hemsworth was in talks to be part of the movie, we don't know anything about it. And there's no director. And genuinely, it needs a director, and I think Josh Cooley should be a director. Considering the fact that they've closed a deal with Josh Cooley, again, presumably, then it's just like, is he directing that movie? Or is he directing his own movie that is set within Transformers? And we don't know. And then finally, there's also apparently 2 more unnamed installments that are currently, in talks right now. But this only begs the question, what is the future of the franchise? Because none of us know. None of us know where this is going to go. We don't know if there's going to be a continuation of the current reboot verse. We don't know if there's going to be a continuation of the Transformers 1 universe. We know nothing. We don't even know if they're just going to reboot the whole thing entirely, which, I mean, in retrospect, wouldn't be terrible. But the biggest issue that has been kind of, within the realm of the Transformers movies at Paramount is the really poor labeling of these films and the really poor communication of what is canon and what's not. It's very obvious that the Michael Bay movies and Bumblebee, Rise of the Beast, Transformers 1 are separate continuities entirely. It is obvious, and if you think otherwise, then you are coping hard, because there's no way. But there's been so many issues. Because here's the thing. Let's take Sony, for example. Sony has been, making Spider-Man movies since, the early 2000s. And they started off their Sam Raimi trilogy with the Tobey Maguire films, and there were 3 movies, and that's it. And then in the 2010s, then we got The Amazing Spider-Man, and then The Amazing Spider-Man 2. They didn't call that Spider-Man 4 and Spider-Man 5, but with a different cast. No, they called it The Amazing Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And it was a reboot. It was a rebooted aspect of the franchise under the same studio. And the biggest issue with Paramount is the fact that when they rebooted their franchise, they didn't just relabel everything, because, in all fairness, of course, Bumblebee was a very they rebooted the franchise fast with Bumblebee, because it was originally supposed to be part of the Michael Bay, set of films, but it didn't happen. But now what's bad is that there's no proper separation between Michael Bay's Transformers and the new rebooted Transformers. There's no separation, even though they're separate continuities, but they still label Bumblebee as Transformers 6 and Rise of the Beast as Transformers 7. See, they didn't do that for Transformers 1. They didn't call it Transformers 8, because it's not necessarily an installment within the live-action films. It's just that their logic is, this is a live-action Transformers movie, so we're going to label it as, a specific number installment, after the last installment that we placed. That's terrible. That is not a good way. If you really want people to be able to differentiate what parts of your franchise are what, then you give them a different number. Bumblebee should have been like a, Transformers Prelude. Like, I don't think it should have even had a number, because technically it's Transformers 1 and Rise of the Beast is Transformers 2. Like, those are that's how the new numbering should be. I kind of view Rise of the Beast as like Transformers 1, but Bumblebee is like a prelude. So like Bumblebee Prelude, Rise of the Beast, Transformers 1, and G.I. Joe crossover Transformers 2, whatever. So it's just like, it's such a poor numbering system, and it causes so much confusion with the fandom and with, how everyone views these movies, especially like the basic moviegoer. But even then, I would assume that the basic moviegoer has been able to kind of see the difference between the new movies and the old Michael Bay movies. Like, it's a pretty stark contrast. Like, I don't think you have to be a fan to kind of notice the issues with trying to connect Bumblebee 2018 to Transformers 2007. Like, there's just so many issues there. But coming off of that tangent, again, we don't know where the franchise is going to go. If these 5 movies are in fact in the works, what is the plan going forward? Are they going to continue with the reboot verse? Are they going to continue with, are the two movies that they have planned sequels to, Transformers 1? Like, is it Transformers 2 and 3? Like, what are they? And because Josh Cooley said that, Paramount isn't really planning on, they don't have any plans to continue with a sequel with Transformers 1, but that doesn't mean no. Like, that doesn't exactly mean no. It doesn't mean yes either, but it doesn't mean no. Now, Paramount, from what we know, has been going through a very, very strenuous merger process with Skydance, and there's been a lot of stuff going on there. If you don't know, essentially what happened is Paramount got sued. Well, their one of their partner companies, CBS, got sued by the current president, and over a really stupid thing, but they got sued, and so Paramount's been stuck in this whole legal process going on where it's just like, they can't seem to get a lot of stuff moving. And because of the lawsuit, which I'm pretty sure that's passed now, but another issue that kind of arose was the FCC has been investigating a lot of movie studios for DEI, involvement of any kind. And it's mainly due to the current administration's, desire to rule out all DEI programs and all that kind of stuff. So because of that, essentially what the FCC told Paramount was, because they're the ones who are kind of responsible for getting this merger passed. Like, it's one of those things where, for whatever reason, movie studio mergers now have to be passed by like a federal level. It's really weird. I don't understand why that's the case, but it just is. I guess, they don't want propaganda in their movies, all that. Yeah, I don't know. But so the FCC is investigating a lot of studios, and they're investigating Paramount. And they basically told Paramount, hey, if you want your merger with Skydance to go through, our investigation of you for DEI, yada, 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 has to, prove to us that, you are abiding by the current administration's goals of keeping out all DEI and all that kind of stuff. And if you can prove that to us, then we will give you your merger. And that's pretty much kind of like the last of what we've heard of that. So the main thing that we have to look at right now is, will the merger go through? Because if the merger doesn't go through, then our chances of seeing this possible side of the Transformers franchise moving forward, not just Transformers, but G.I. Joe, Dungeons and Dragons, literally whatever Hasbro IP, Paramount has been making movies for, would be at stake. So we kind of have to just kind of keep a skeptical eye on this, because there's a very likely reason why Paramount hasn't exactly been talking about Transformers, and why this is only in the planning stages, because it doesn't seem like it's in the planning stages on a higher level, but rather the level of the people who are part of the Transformers team at Paramount, who work on these movies and all that kind of stuff. So it seems to me like, while they're planning stuff out, Paramount and their higher ups aren't really thinking about that as of now. I think they're just trying to think of the Skydance merger trying to go through, and they have until October. If that doesn't go through in October, then they have to decide if they want to keep pursuing this or if they want to go their separate ways. So that is currently the state of Paramount right now, and if that doesn't go through again, then the chances of anything moving forward regarding Hasbro's IPs is slim to none. And the reason this merger is very important is because Skydance would be essentially inheriting a lot of the funding that would be needed for future films to move forward. When Hasbro stopped funding movies, I mean, a lot of people were saying, oh, Hasbro stopped funding movies, we're not going to get movies anymore, and then all this Armageddon doom posting BS that was going on. It's like, okay, this is what's happening. Essentially, Hasbro stopped funding because they were experiencing their own financial issues. I mean, they literally laid off more than 5,000 workers since, I believe, 2021. So that's really bad. They needed to stop, funding films because they were going through their own financial stuff. I completely understand, that needed to happen. With Paramount now, they have to find another company that would be willing to help fund these movies going forward, especially because of the low box office numbers in recent years. So, you know, it's necessary to get more studio involvement to be able to, you know, help to fund these movies. And Skydance was the best contender since they had already been working with Paramount for the past few years, I believe since like 2021, 2022, around that. So it is necessary that they have another studio to at least help fund the movies. Now, because of this, the original window was for Paramount to be able to pump out a new movie for Transformers specifically by 2027, or at least have a movie in production by 2027. But I think because of all of the issues going on with the merger, I believe they were given at least a 2-year grace period, because we did see that apparently they have until 2029 instead of 2027 to have a movie in production by that time. So it seems to me like Hasbro might have given them a 2-year grace period to basically, you know, just kind of be like, hey, we know you're going through troubles with the merger. We'll give you 2 more years to try to figure things out and try to get things on track. So, you know, you have until 2029 to have a movie in production. If not, then we have to revoke the rights and try to figure something else out. And if that is the case, then it's going to take even longer, because Hasbro is going to have to find another studio to, you know, work on films for. And it's just going to be a very long process that, you know, we're going to be waiting a very long time to see anything new movie-wise for Transformers. So there's that, I guess. But overall, those are really just kind of like my thoughts and my speculation on the matter, as well as what factually we know about this whole situation. Just stay skeptical about it, but also, you know, stay hopeful, because to be fair, we've kind of been in a weird place with the franchise in the past few years, and I wouldn't exactly go down the rabbit hole of saying, oh, the franchise is dying, you know, it's hopeless, Armageddon, oh my god, you know. I don't really, that's not really my mindset right now. It's more so just like, okay, let's look at what's happening, this is what's happening, and let's just kind of go from there. You know, there's not really much we can do as fans. The only thing that we can do is just wait and see where things go. If the merger goes through, then cool. Then, you know, there's a lot more likelihood that we'll get future films. They might also have to just scale back a little bit and just kind of take a step back and be like, okay, let's see what works, you know, what we should do going forward, because box office has been poor anyways. But yeah, so that's just my thoughts. That's my feelings on it. And yeah, but anyways, guys, if you have any thoughts about this, you know, based on what I've said, or based on what, you know, is provided information wise, then, you know, feel free to talk about it in the comments. I also have YouTube recently rolled out a new community page where you guys can actually interact and make comments, make posts, and I have a community feature in my channel right now. So if you guys want to maybe talk about that even more over there, then feel free. If you guys want to talk about it in the comments, feel free. But anyways, guys, thank you all for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.